What if you could walk into any room and immediately connect with anyone? Not through magic or charisma alone, but through simple, scientifically proven actions that shape how people perceive you within seconds. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding the fundamental building blocks of human connection. Social psychology has uncovered specific, repeatable behaviors that dramatically increase likability and rapport. These are not abstract theories. They are practical, ethical tools you can use in your next conversation, meeting, or social encounter to build genuine affinity. Let's dive into the 5 psychological tricks that work on anyone, anywhere, every time. Our first trick is one of the most powerful and subtle tools in the social toolkit: mirroring body language. This is the unconscious mimicry of another person's posture, gestures, and expressions. When you subtly mirror someone, leaning in when they lean in, nodding when they nod, matching their speech pace, you are sending a primal, nonverbal signal that says, "I am like you, I am safe, we are in sync." Research shows this builds instant rapport and trust. It activates what neuroscientists call mirror neurons, the brain systems that help us understand and empathize with others. The key is subtlety. A direct imitation is creepy, but a gentle, delayed reflection of their open posture or hand gestures creates a powerful sense of alignment. In a negotiation, it can foster cooperation. On a date, it can create intimacy. In a job interview, it can make you feel like a natural fit. Start by simply paying attention. Notice if they speak with their hands, how they sit, their energy level. Then, allow your own body language to gently harmonize with theirs. You'll be amazed at how the dynamic shifts toward mutual comfort and understanding. The second trick is disarmingly simple, yet profoundly effective: using someone's name repeatedly. There is no sweeter sound to a person than their own name. When you use it in conversation, you are personalizing the interaction in a powerful way. It commands attention, shows respect, and makes the individual feel recognized as a unique person, not just a face in the crowd. The psychology behind this, often called the personalization effect, ties directly to our need for social validation. Hearing our name triggers a mini reward response in the brain, but frequency and context matter. Use it naturally at the beginning and end of a conversation or when making a key point. "You know, Sarah, that's an excellent perspective," or "Thank you for your help today, David." Avoid overuse, as it can feel like a cheap sales tactic. The goal is to weave their name into the dialogue with genuine warmth. This single act can transform a transactional exchange into a memorable, positive connection, making you stand out as someone who is attentive and personable. Now, let's explore a trick that seems completely counterintuitive: the Ben Franklin effect. The founding father famously noted that he would win over a difficult colleague not by doing them a favor, but by asking them for a small favor, like borrowing a rare book. Psychology is rooted in cognitive dissonance. Our brains strive for consistency between our actions and our beliefs. If I do a favor for you, my mind rationalizes, "I must like this person, otherwise why would I help them?" This small act of investment makes the other person more inclined to like you and help you again in the future. The application is straightforward. Ask for a small, reasonable favor that requires minimal effort: an opinion on a project, a recommendation for a good coffee place, or to pass the salt. The request should be easy to grant and impossible to refuse. This isn't about exploitation, it's about creating a small bond of cooperation. By granting your request, they have made an investment in the relationship, and people naturally value what they invest in. It's a powerful way to turn neutrality or mild resistance into a willing alliance. The fourth trick is the cornerstone of all meaningful interaction: active listening and validation. This goes far beyond just hearing words. It's about fully concentrating, understanding, responding, and then remembering what is said. The trick lies in the validation component, demonstrating that you not only hear but also acknowledge the feelings and perspective behind the words. Use phrases like, "It makes complete sense that you'd feel that way," or "I can see why that was so important to you." Employ techniques like paraphrasing. "So, what you're saying is," and asking open-ended questions that encourage deeper sharing. The psychology here taps into a profound human need to feel seen and understood. When people feel heard, they attribute likability and competence to the listener. They associate the positive feeling of being understood with your presence. In a world where everyone is waiting for their turn to speak, being the person who truly listens is a superpower. It disarms conflict, deepens bonds, and makes you the person others seek out and confide in. Our fifth trick involves careful and appropriate physicality, strategic touch. This is the most potent tool on the list and must be used with the highest degree of ethical caution and situational awareness. Research in what's known as compliance studies has shown that a light, brief touch on the shoulder or upper arm during an interaction can significantly increase positive feelings and agreement. This fleeting contact, often lasting less than a second, releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and creates a subconscious sense of connection and trust. In studies, waitstaff who lightly touched customers received larger tips. Colleagues were more likely to agree to requests. The rules are absolute. It must be extremely brief, culturally appropriate, context appropriate, and never intrusive. A half-second pat on the shoulder when thanking someone, or a light touch on the arm when sharing a laugh, can cement a positive feeling. Misapplied, it can be a catastrophic violation. Always err on the side of caution. When in doubt, don't. But when the context is right, a celebration, a heartfelt thank you, a moment of shared excitement, this micro-interaction can be the final ingredient that transforms a good impression into a great one. The psychology behind these tricks connects to the foundational principles of influence, most famously codified by Dr. Robert Cialdini. Mirroring and strategic touch relate to liking. We are persuaded by people we like and feel similar to. Using someone's name is a direct path to friendship and affiliation. The Ben Franklin effect is a masterclass in commitment and consistency. People align their beliefs with their actions. Active listening is a powerful engine for reciprocity. When you give someone the gift of true attention, they feel a subconscious pull to reciprocate the positive feeling toward you. Understanding these underlying principles, reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity, allows you to see these tricks not as isolated hacks, but as applications of a deeper understanding of human social behavior. Beyond these 5 core tricks, understanding the supporting psychological frameworks elevates them from simple tactics to a cohesive strategy for connection. A crucial underlying concept is nonverbal synchrony, which expands on mirroring. This isn't just about posture, it's about aligning with the rhythm of the conversation itself. Studies show that when people click, their physiological functions, like heart rate and breathing, can actually begin to synchronize. While you can't control this directly, you can foster it by matching the energy and tempo of the interaction. Is the person speaking quickly with excited gestures? Pick up your own pace. Are they calm and measured? Slow down your speech and movements. This dance of synchrony signals deep cognitive engagement and is a powerful subconscious driver of mutual liking and perceived understanding. Another high-level principle that amplifies these tricks is the concept of strategic self-disclosure. The principle of reciprocity dictates that when someone shares something personal with us, we feel a natural urge to reciprocate. You can ethically guide this by offering a small, appropriate piece of personal information first, a mild opinion, a shared experience, a light-hearted admission. This acts as a social gift that invites the other person to open up, creating a virtuous cycle of sharing that rapidly builds intimacy and trust. For example, after actively listening to a colleague's stressful week, you might say, "I completely understand that pressure. I had a project last month that kept me up at night figuring out the details." This balanced disclosure validates their experience and makes you more human and relatable, directly feeding the liking principle. Let's also address a common pitfall, the over-eagerness effect. In your enthusiasm to apply these techniques, there is a risk of coming across as performative or desperate for approval. The human brain is excellent at detecting incongruence. If you are mirroring someone's gestures, but your facial expression is blank, or you're using their name with a robotic frequency while your eyes dart around the room, you will create distrust, not rapport. The antidote is to focus on authentic curiosity. Genuine interest in another person will naturally guide you toward many of these behaviors. You'll lean in to hear them, mirroring. You'll remember their name because they matter, and you'll listen because you're truly engaged. The tricks are simply polished expressions of this innate curiosity. They work best when they are in service of a real desire to connect, not as a mechanical checklist. We must also consider the cultural and contextual lens. The effectiveness and appropriateness of these tactics vary widely. Strategic touch, for instance, can be warmly received in some cultures and considered a profound violation in others. Mirroring a superior's posture might be seen as disrespectful in a highly formal hierarchical setting. The use of first names requires careful judgment. In many professional and cultural contexts, using a title and surname until invited to do otherwise is the true path to respect and liking. The most sophisticated practitioners are cultural detectives. They observe first, adapt second, and apply third. They ask themselves, what are the norms here? What is the power dynamic? The universal principle is to respect local customs, showing that respect is in itself a powerful likability signal. To deepen the impact of active listening, incorporate the technique of labeling emotions. This advanced form of validation, drawn from negotiation psychology, involves identifying and calmly stating the emotion you perceive in the other person. For example, "It seems like you're really passionate about this," or "That sounds incredibly frustrating." By giving a name to the feeling, you demonstrate profound empathy. This can diffuse tension and make the other person feel profoundly understood on an emotional level, which is a direct shortcut to trust and liking. It shows you're listening not just to words, but to the human being behind them. Finally, we should discuss the long-term game of likability. These instant tricks are the spark, but sustaining positive relationships requires consistency and integrity. This is where Cialdini's principle of consistency works in your favor over time. If you consistently show up as a good listener, a respectful collaborator, and a genuine person, people will not only like you initially, but will also feel compelled to maintain that positive view of you. Their own self-narrative becomes, "I like and trust this person," and they will seek evidence to confirm that belief. Your ethical use of these tools at the outset builds a foundation for this lasting consistency. Conversely, if you use these techniques to create a false impression that later crumbles, the backlash will be severe. Authenticity, therefore, is not just ethical, it is strategic for enduring influence. Integrating these tricks into your daily life is a process of mindful practice. Begin with low-stakes interactions: the barista, a casual acquaintance, a new colleague. Practice active listening with a family member, focusing solely on understanding them without formulating your response. Experiment with subtly mirroring a friend's energy during a story. The goal is not perfection, but increased awareness. Over time, these behaviors will become integrated into your natural social repertoire. You'll find conversations flowing more smoothly, conflicts resolving with less friction, and new connections forming with greater ease. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about unlocking the most effective, connected, and persuasive version of yourself that already exists. By combining the science of behavior with the art of human warmth, you equip yourself with the most powerful tool there is, the ability to build genuine bridges, one positive interaction at a time. It is impossible to overstate the importance of ethical boundaries. These tools are meant for building rapport, fostering cooperation, and creating positive relationships in both personal and professional settings. They are not for manipulation, deception, or coercion. The litmus test is intention. Are you using this to create a genuine win-win connection or to extract something at the other person's expense? Using these techniques unethically will eventually be perceived as inauthentic and will destroy trust. The goal is to become a more engaging, attentive, and effective communicator, not a puppet master. Let's walk through a practice scenario. Imagine you're meeting a new client, Alex. You start by using their name warmly upon introduction. As you sit, you notice Alex speaks deliberately and leans forward slightly. You subtly mirror this attentive posture. You employ active listening, asking about their core challenges and validating their concerns. That sounds like a complex situation, Alex. I can understand the pressure that creates. Later, you employ the Ben Franklin effect. Alex, you have great insight into this market. Could I send you a brief draft later for your quick reaction? At the end of the positive meeting, as you shake hands, you might add a brief, light touch with your left hand to their arm in a gesture of thanks. Each step, applied ethically and naturally, builds a layered sense of rapport, respect, and mutual liking. Mastering these psychological tricks is about practice and awareness. Start by focusing on one per day. Tomorrow, consciously try to use people's names. The next day, practice active listening in every conversation. These are skills that compound. They will make you a better friend, partner, leader, and colleague. You are not tricking people into liking a false version of you. You are using proven social mechanics to ensure your genuine, best self is seen, heard, and appreciated. In the end, these tricks simply remove the static that can interfere with human connection, allowing your authentic likability to shine through, loud and clear. You've probably tried to break a bad habit at least once in your life. Maybe it was biting your nails, doom scrolling at 2 a.m., procrastinating until the last minute, or constantly checking your phone even when you promised yourself you wouldn't. You tell yourself, "This time I'm done." But a few days later, you're right back where you started. And every time it happens, you wonder if there's something wrong with you, something weak, something undisciplined, something broken. But here's the truth. Your struggle was never about willpower. It was never about being weak or lacking discipline. Your brain is literally designed to hold on to habits, especially the bad ones. And once you understand why, you finally get the power to override it. So let's start with a simple idea. Your brain's job is not to make you happy. It's to make you efficient. Your brain wants to save energy, reduce thinking, and automate as much as possible. Every time you repeat a behavior, your brain takes notes. It asks, "Is this something I'll need to do again?" And if the answer seems to be yes, because you do it repeatedly, it stores that behavior in the basal ganglia, the part of your brain responsible for habit formation. Think of it like your brain's automation center. Once a habit enters this system, it becomes incredibly easy to repeat and incredibly difficult to break. Not because you want it, but because your brain wants to run on autopilot. And here's where the trap begins. Every habit, good or bad, follows the same loop. Cue, routine, reward. Something triggers your brain. You respond with an automatic action, and you get some kind of reward, sometimes emotional, sometimes chemical, sometimes both. Maybe the cue is stress. The routine is grabbing your phone. The reward is a tiny hit of dopamine from seeing notifications. Or the cue is boredom. The routine is opening the fridge. The reward is the momentary pleasure of a snack. Over time, the cue becomes glued to the routine. That's why breaking bad habits feels like fighting gravity. The entire loop hides beneath awareness, operating in the shadows. Most people try to break habits by attacking the routine directly. They try to stop drinking soda, stop procrastinating, stop scrolling, stop overeating. But when the cue still exists, and the reward still exists, your brain eventually drags you right back. This is why willpower doesn't work. Willpower is like trying to hold back a river with your bare hands. You can resist for a moment, but eventually the water overpowers you. Real change happens when you target the loop, not the routine. The tricky part is how long habits take to replace. People love repeating that old myth. It takes 21 days to form a habit. But research paints a completely different picture. It can take 18 days, or it can take 254 days. Most people fall somewhere around 66. Your brain's pathways physically rewire themselves over time, and those pathways, once built, don't just disappear. Even years later, the old habit still exists like a dormant program. You can overwrite it, you can weaken it, but you can't erase it entirely. That's why people who used to smoke may suddenly crave a cigarette after years of quitting. It's not because they failed, it's because their brain remembers. To break the loop, you start with awareness. You identify the cue. You figure out what triggers the behavior. Most people skip this step, and that's why they stay stuck. Let's say you constantly binge-watch shows late at night. The cue might be loneliness. It might be stressful. It might be fatigue. It might be the moment you lie down in bed. Once you understand the cue, you can target it directly. You can change your environment, shift your routine, or prepare an alternative response. The key is replacing the routine, not eliminating it. Your brain still wants the reward, and if you take that reward away completely, your brain will fight back. Imagine your reward is relaxation. Instead of doom scrolling, you might switch to reading for 5 minutes. Instead of junk food, maybe a walk outside. Instead of procrastination, maybe starting a timer for just 1 minute. By keeping the reward intact, your brain doesn't feel punished. It feels redirected. And that small shift is enough to begin rewiring your neural pathways. But here's something most people never consider. Bad habits don't survive because you're weak. They survive because they work. They give you something: relief, escape, pleasure, comfort, control, stimulation. Your goal is not to destroy that need. It's to satisfy it in a healthier way. If you don't replace it, your brain will cling to whatever worked before. Another reason habits stick is dopamine. Dopamine isn't the chemical of pleasure, it's the chemical of expectation. It fires before the reward, not after. When your brain predicts a positive outcome, dopamine spikes. That's why just thinking about checking your phone gives you a little thrill. That's why anticipating junk food feels almost as good as eating it. That's why habits become emotional shortcuts. Your brain experiences cravings before the action even happens. This means that breaking a habit requires you to interrupt the prediction. You have to delay the reward long enough to retrain the expectation. And delaying doesn't mean denying. If you delay something for even 10 minutes, you change the chemistry of the craving. Cravings are like waves. They rise, peak, then fall. Most cravings last 90 seconds. People who understand this become masters of their own behavior. They allow the craving to come and go without acting on it. They surf the urge instead of drowning in it. So let's walk through a system that actually works. First, identify the cue. Write down the exact moment the behavior happens. What time of day? What emotional state? What location? What people are present? The clearer the cue, the easier the next step becomes. Second, replace the routine. Don't focus on stopping the habit. Focus on swapping it. If you always eat snacks after dinner, maybe swap them with tea. If you scroll your phone first thing in the morning, maybe place your phone across the room. If you procrastinate on work, maybe use a 1-minute action rule. It sounds small, almost too small, but your brain loves small. Third, keep the reward. If your reward from scrolling was dopamine from novelty, replace it with something stimulating but healthier, like learning something quick or reading a page of an interesting book. If the reward was comfort, replace it with a comfort ritual. Fourth, start small. Your brain resists massive change. It interprets big changes as threats. Small changes slip under the radar. Fifth, track consistency. Habits grow stronger through repetition, not intensity. A single skipped day won't ruin you. Missing multiple days resets momentum. Tracking keeps you accountable and turns your new habit into a chain you don't want to break. Now imagine someone who struggles with procrastination. Their cue might be feeling overwhelmed. Their routine is avoidance. Their reward is temporary relief. To break this loop, they don't need more discipline. They need a smaller entry point. Something like working for 1 minute, then stopping. This sounds too easy, almost silly, but it works because it changes the emotional association. The brain stops perceiving the task as a threat. Over time, 1 minute becomes 2, then 5, then 10. The key is making the habit so small you can't say no. Let's consider another example. Someone who wants to quit phone addiction. The cue might be boredom. The routine is picking up the phone. The reward is instant dopamine. In this case, the solution is not locking the phone in another room. Your brain will always find a way around extreme restrictions. The solution is creating friction. Move distracting apps off your home screen. Increase the number of steps needed to open them. Reduce notifications. Set phone-free zones like your bedroom or dining table. Each tiny barrier gives your brain time to interrupt the automatic behavior. Breaking bad habits also requires understanding emotional triggers. Many habits aren't physical, they're emotional coping mechanisms. Stress often leads to overeating. Loneliness leads to scrolling social media. Exhaustion leads to binge watching. Anxiety leads to fidgeting or nail biting. When the emotional cause remains untreated, the habit becomes a crutch. You're not fighting the habit, you're fighting the emotion behind it. The most powerful habit breakers are people who learn to sit with negative emotions without immediately seeking escape. When you stop running from the feeling, the habit loses its power. This brings us to self-identity. The strongest habits are identity-based. When someone says, "I'm trying to quit smoking," the identity is still tied to smoking. When someone says, "I'm not a smoker," the identity shifts. Your brain always works to stay consistent with your self-image. If your identity is, "I'm a person who exercises," working out becomes automatic. If your identity is, "I'm always late," your behavior will match it. Changing identity is slow, but powerful. Every small action becomes a vote for the person you want to become. And eventually, the identity becomes real. And now we get into something deeper: your environment. People underestimate how much their surroundings dictate their habits. If your phone is next to you, you'll use it. If junk food is in your kitchen, you'll eat it. If your bed is too comfortable, you'll snooze your alarms. Changing your environment is often more effective than changing your mind. Put your phone in another room. Remove snacks from your house. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Create a workspace that feels inviting. The environment shapes behavior effortlessly, without relying on willpower. Another mistake people make is attempting to break multiple habits at once. That drains mental energy and increases failure rates. Focus on one habit until it's stable, then move to the next. People who layer habits one at a time build long-term change. People who try to change everything at once burn out. Lasting transformation is slow. It's quiet. It looks boring. But it works. Now let's describe the moment change begins. It's when you stop expecting overnight results. Most people quit because progress feels invisible at first. Nothing seems different. The brain rewires in the background long before you notice change in the foreground. The reward of consistency is delayed, but it's worth it. Over time, the new habit becomes easier than the old one. That's when the magic happens. That's when you realize you're no longer forcing it, you're simply living it. To make all of this real, imagine you're someone who struggles with nighttime overeating. Your evenings are a mix of stress and boredom, and the kitchen becomes a place of comfort. You know it's a bad habit, but your brain associates it with relaxation. So instead of trying to quit cold turkey, you change the cue. Maybe you start brushing your teeth right after dinner. Nobody likes eating after brushing. Or you replace the routine. Instead of opening the fridge, you brew herbal tea. Or you keep the reward. After resisting the urge, you let yourself watch one episode of your favorite show guilt-free. Over a few weeks, the craving weakens, the loop breaks, and you never needed willpower. You needed strategy. And here's the part nobody talks about. The battle with a bad habit doesn't happen at the moment of action, it happens in the 5 seconds before it. That tiny gap, the pause between impulse and behavior, that is where your entire life actually changes. Most people don't even realize this gap exists because the habit loop fires so quickly. The cue appears, dopamine spikes, the body moves, and the mind follows afterward, rationalizing the behavior you've already done. But when you learn to widen that gap, even by one breath, 1 second of awareness, you disrupt the autopilot. That disruption is the key to transformation. Think about how many times you've acted before noticing what you were doing. You open your phone without remembering picking it up. You snack while watching a show, and suddenly the whole packet is empty. You say you'll exercise in 5 minutes, and suddenly it's midnight. None of this happens consciously. Your brain slips into a pre-recorded pattern. Scientists call this automaticity. It's the moment when a behavior becomes so deeply ingrained that it requires almost zero effort to activate. This is why habits are powerful and dangerous. Once a routine becomes automatic, your conscious brain barely participates. You're not choosing anymore, you're replaying. So the question becomes, how do you interrupt a pattern that fires before you even notice it? The answer is presence, not in a spiritual sense, but in a neurological one. When you bring conscious awareness into the moment, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain responsible for decision-making. This region is like the brakes on a car. Habits are like the accelerator. If your brakes are weak, the habit wins. If your brakes get strong, the habit weakens. One of the fastest ways to strengthen this braking system is through micropauses. Every time you notice an urge rising, count down from 5 slowly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. During that short countdown, your brain shifts from autopilot to awareness. And in that awareness, you suddenly regain control long enough to choose a different action. And this brings us to something even more important. Emotional cravings. Almost every bad habit is emotionally driven. The emotion comes first. Loneliness, stress, anxiety, boredom, fatigue, and the habit becomes your brain's attempt to self-soothe. This is why removing a habit without addressing the emotion rarely works. If you take away the coping mechanism but not the feeling underneath it, the habit will come back, or transform into a different bad habit. You might quit smoking, but start overeating. You might stop overeating, but start endlessly scrolling. Your brain isn't addicted to the habit itself. It's addicted to what the habit protects you from feeling. Behavioral economists call this choice architecture. You create an environment where the default behavior supports your goals instead of sabotaging them. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow every night. Want to drink more water? Keep a bottle on your desk. Want to limit screen time? Make your phone grayscale and hide distracting apps. The easier you make the new habit, the faster your brain rewires. The beauty is that the environment works even when motivation fails. The real breakthrough comes when you realize your brain is not your enemy. It's simply following the pathways it built. When you change the pathway, you change the behavior. And the moment you change your behavior, you begin changing your life. If you've tried to quit before and failed, that wasn't failure. It was your brain doing exactly what it was programmed to do. Now you get to reprogram it. Now you know the loop. Now you know chemistry. Now you know the system. And once you understand the system, nothing can stop you from building the life you actually want. Imagine sitting in a dark theater, the only light coming from the screen. Your heart pounding so hard you can hear it in your ears. And even though you know it's just a movie, your brain is reacting as if something in that room is about to kill you. That gap between knowing you're safe and feeling like you're not is exactly where horror movies live, and it reveals a shocking amount about how your fear circuits actually work. Horror isn't just about ghosts, slashers, and monsters. It's about a very real, very ancient system in your brain getting hijacked for entertainment. Start with that jolt you feel during a jump scare. A door slams, a figure appears behind the character, the music hits a sharp note, and your whole body reacts instantly. The first player on the scene is your amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure buried deep in your brain that acts like a threat detector. It does not wait for a detailed explanation. It doesn't care that you bought a ticket, sat down in a comfy chair, and have popcorn in your hand. The amygdala's only job is to ask, is there even a chance this could be dangerous? If the answer might be yes, it hits the alarm. As soon as that alarm is triggered, the signal spreads. Your hypothalamus and brainstem pass the message down to your body, and now the classic fight-or-flight response is in motion. Your adrenal glands dump stress hormones into your bloodstream. Your heart rate shoots up, your lungs pull in more air, your pupils widen to catch more light. Your muscles tense as if you're about to sprint or throw a punch. Rationally, you're in a safe place, but biologically, your body is preparing to fight for its life. Horror movies are basically engineers of this response. Long, quiet tracking shots, footsteps echoing in an empty hallway, the camera slowly closing in on a door that you just know shouldn't be opened. These moments wind your nervous system up like a spring. Your brain starts scanning for any clue that something bad is about to happen. Then, right at the peak of tension, the scare hits. The monster lunges, the body falls from the ceiling, the mirror reveals a face that wasn't there before. The emotional spring snaps, and your fear response fires at full strength. Inside your head, this is not just one region flickering on and off. When neuroscientists put people into brain scanners and let them watch horror, they see entire networks coming online in sync. The amygdala is active, sure, but so are areas that handle internal bodily sensations, conflict, pain, and visual detail. It's like a survival orchestra, and the movie is the conductor. Your visual system is taking in shadows, flickers, and sudden movement. Your auditory system is decoding distant creaks, whispers, and musical cues. Your emotional circuits are weighing all of that and leaning hard toward something is wrong. But here's where it gets really interesting. Not all fear on screen looks the same inside your brain. Think about two different horror moments. In one, a character walks down a dark basement staircase. Flashlight shaking, barely any sound except breathing and the occasional drip of water. Nothing jumps out yet, but you feel that crawling sense of dread building. That's anticipatory fear. Your attention systems and sensory areas are lit up, focusing hard on every tiny clue. Any faint movement, any flicker in the corner of the frame. Your brain is essentially saying, "Get ready. Something is coming." In another scene, the threat finally shows itself. The creature charges the camera, the killer appears in the doorway, or the possessed character snaps toward the viewer with inhuman speed. That's acute fear. Suddenly, the emphasis shifts deeper into instinctive survival circuits. It's less about scanning possibilities and more about reacting to an immediate threat. Your body jerks, your muscles contract, you might even shout without meaning to. The brain has moved from watching for danger to danger is here, even though it's still just pixels on a screen. Now here's the twist that horror really exposes. While all of this is happening, another part of your brain knows you're safe. Higher order regions involved in judgment and reasoning watch the same movie and quietly whisper, "Relax, this isn't real." Those regions can modulate how long the fear lasts and how intense it feels. They help put the brakes on your emotional reaction. That's why after a scare you can laugh, roll your eyes, or say, "Wow, that got me," instead of staying in panic mode. The tension between these systems, one ancient and reactive, one more modern and reflective, is at the core of what horror shows about your brain. On one side, you have fast, automatic, survival-focused circuits built to assume that ambiguous sights and sounds might be dangerous. On the other side, you have slower, deliberate systems capable of stepping back and saying, "This is a simulation." Horror movies push the survival side right up to the edge, but rely on the reflective side to keep the whole experience inside the fun zone. Of course, people vary a lot in how this internal balance plays out, and horror is a great window into those differences. Some people love being scared. They line up for every new haunted house. They watch found footage films alone at night. They seek out the goriest slashers and most disturbing psychological thrillers. These are often high sensation seekers, people whose brains are wired to crave intense stimulation. For them, the spike in heart rate and adrenaline feels exciting rather than overwhelming. The fear comes with a payoff, a rush that makes them want to do it again. Others are the complete opposite. 10 minutes into a horror movie and they're done. Heart racing too fast, skin crawling, mind spinning out worst-case scenarios. They might struggle to sleep afterward or find their thoughts drifting back to disturbing scenes at random moments. For them, the safety message from those higher-order regions doesn't land strongly enough to contain the reaction. The simulated threat bleeds into real anxiety, and the body keeps acting like danger might still be around even after the credits roll. Personality traits add another layer. People with higher empathy may be more affected by painful or traumatic scenes because they mentally put themselves in the character's position. When a character is hunted, trapped, or harmed, highly empathetic viewers don't just watch it, they feel it. On the flip side, people who are curious about dark topics, death, violence, catastrophe, are often drawn to horror because it gives them a safe way to explore those themes. They can look directly at what scares them, but inside a controlled, fictional frame. If you zoom in on how horror is constructed, you can see that filmmakers are essentially running experiments on your prediction and attention systems. The slow pan across an empty room, the slightly open closet door, the silence that goes on for just a bit too long. These techniques all feed into your brain's obsession with predicting what happens next. Your brain is a prediction machine. It constantly uses the past to guess the future. In horror, those guesses start to cluster around, "Something bad is going to appear right about now." This is where fake-outs come in. A cat jumps out of the cupboard instead of the killer. The figure in the doorway turns out to be a friend. The sound upstairs is just the wind. Every time this happens, your brain has to revise its prediction. That repeated cycle of anticipate, Fear, relief, builds up tension while also keeping you engaged. You're not just watching the story, your nervous system is playing a guessing game the entire time. And when the real threat finally arrives, the payoff is even bigger because you've been primed over and over. The part that often gets less attention is what happens after the scare. Once the threat on screen passes, your brain has to deliberately wind the system down. Those higher order areas begin reappraising everything. We're at home, on the couch, nothing bad happened. That was a story. Your breathing slows, your heart rate drops, your muscles loosen. That shift from high fear to safety feels good, almost like emotional stretching after a workout. For some people, that swing from terror to relief is the best part of the experience. In fact, this cycle, build tension, trigger fear, return to safety, may be one reason horror can feel strangely therapeutic for some viewers. By repeatedly stepping into fear and coming out unharmed, you practice tolerating intense emotions. You get used to feeling your heart race, your stomach drop, your skin prickle, without needing to escape the situation. It becomes a kind of emotional training ground. You're not curing anxiety with horror movies, but you are teaching your brain that it can ride out strong feelings and still be okay. Of course, this only works if the fear stays inside that controlled space. For some people, especially younger viewers or those already dealing with anxiety or trauma, the images and stories can be too much. Nightmares, intrusive thoughts, and sleep disruption are signs that the brain is having trouble closing the file labeled fiction. The threat signal keeps echoing, and the nervous system doesn't fully reset. In those cases, horror doesn't feel like a workout, it feels like an attack. Something else horror reveals about your brain is how social fear can be. Watching a scary movie alone and watching it with a group are completely different experiences. In a theater or on the couch with friends, people react together. One person jumps, another laughs, someone hides behind a pillow, and all of those reactions feed into each other. Your brain is constantly reading other people's faces, posture, and tone. When everyone around you is tense, you feel it. When everyone bursts out laughing after a scare, you relax faster. Under the surface, there's evidence that people's brains literally synchronize when they watch the same movie. Similar areas light up at the same moments, driven by the same visuals and sounds. With horror, that means a whole room full of brains can be locked into the same fear rhythm. Hearts rising together, tension peaking together, relief washing over everyone at the same time. That shared ride amplifies everything. Fear feels sharper. Relief feels bigger. And the memory of the experience sticks more deeply because it's social as well as emotional. Step back and look at the whole picture, and horror movies turn into a kind of mirror for the fear response. They show how quickly your ancient survival circuits can override logic. They reveal how powerfully context, like sitting in a theater versus walking alone at night, can shape whether your brain treats something as a real threat. They highlight the role of personality, curiosity, and sensation-seeking in deciding who leans in and who looks away. They even hint at how fear, under the right circumstances, can be reshaped into excitement and used to build emotional resilience. So the next time you feel your heart hammering during a horror movie, don't just think, "This is scary." Think, "This is my brain running a full-scale survival simulation for fun." The shadows on the screen, the jump scares, the creepy music, they're all inputs into a system that evolved to keep you alive in a world full of real predators and dangers. The theater, the sofa, the streaming app. That's the modern twist, the safe container that lets you flirt with terror without paying the real-world cost. In that space between real danger and imagined threat, horror movies do something remarkable. They pull back the curtain on how your brain detects risk, reacts to uncertainty, manages adrenaline, and negotiates the line between panic and thrill. They turn your fear circuitry into a playground. And as strange as it sounds, every time you press play on a scary movie, you're not just watching a story about fear. You're watching your own brain reveal what it was built to do. In the end, horror movies aren't just trying to scare you. They're exposing how your brain keeps you alive. Every jump scare, every creeping shadow, every heartbeat in the dark is your ancient survival system spinning up, then standing down once you remember you're safe. That dance between panic and relief, terror and thrill, is the real star of the show. If this video made you see your own reactions in a new light, remember, the next time you flinch at a horror scene, it's not just the movie doing its job, it's your brain proving it still works. If this video opened your eyes to what horror movies are really doing inside your brain, don't let it stop here. Hit that like button so more people can finally understand why they scream. And still come back for more. Drop a comment telling which horror scene triggered your biggest jump scare ever and why you think you secretly enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe, and get ready, because this is just the beginning of understanding your brain's darkest thrills.